It was an ordinary birthday, until she realized her family had forgotten her completely. What she did next left everyone stunned. Doris Henderson marked her 72nd birthday on the calendar months in advance, a habit she'd kept since the days when her children were small. 4 years, birthdays in the Henderson house were more than tradition, they were proof of belonging. Cakes baked from scratch, a crowded table of laughter and song, presents wrapped with care and tucked under bouquets of wildflowers. Even as her family scattered to their own lives, Doris always found a way to bring them home, at least for one evening. This year felt different. The invitations never arrived. In the weeks leading up to her birthday, Doris waited for the first phone call, the first hint of a plan. She made gentle reminders to her daughter Beth, "Can I bring anything for the party?" and mentioned her birthday to her son Daniel during their Sunday call. Each time, the subject slid away. Beth was busy with work, Daniel preoccupied with his own children's school events, and her daughter-in-law, Karen, always said they'd have to see how everyone's schedule shook out. The more Doris reached out, the more she sensed her birthday was drifting off their family's radar. As the days crept closer, Doris's unease grew. She cleaned the house, bought flowers, even baked a small lemon cake, her favorite, just in case someone dropped by. The day before her birthday, she called Beth one last time. "Oh, Mom," Beth said, her voice distracted, "I don't think we're doing anything this year. Karen has that conference, Daniel's slammed at work, and the kids have a soccer game. Why don't you relax and treat yourself? We'll do something later, promise." Doris hung up gently, not trusting herself to speak. She wandered through her quiet house, her footsteps echoing off the polished floors. Her late husband's photo smiled down from the mantel. Doris traced the edge of the frame, whispering, "Well, Ed, looks like it's just me and you this year." On the morning of her birthday, Doris woke early, sunlight slanting across her bedroom. She fixed herself coffee and sat in the bay window, watching the neighborhood children march off to school. The phone stayed silent. Doris checked her messages, convinced she'd missed a text or email, but there was nothing but a coupon for a free donut from the pharmacy and a robocall reminder about her next checkup. Refusing to let the day slip away, Doris dressed in her best blouse and slacks, added a string of pearls, and drove herself to the local bakery. She bought a single frosted cupcake and sat in the corner, people watching. She smiled at the staff, exchanged polite conversation with other regulars, and made a wish before tasting the first bite. The bakery owner, Mrs. Bauer, noticed the candle and came over with a hug. "Happy birthday, Doris. Where's the family?" Doris laughed, covering her hurt with grace. "Off conquering the world, I suppose." She took a walk through the park, fed the ducks by the pond, and stopped by the library to return a book. Everywhere she went, Doris moved gently, determined not to let loneliness sour the day. That evening, Doris set the lemon cake on her dining table and lit a candle for herself. She poured a glass of wine, raised it to the empty room, and sang "Happy Birthday" softly, her voice shaking just once. As the night grew quiet, Doris sat with a pen and paper, her mind alive with memories of birthdays past. Her children's laughter, the chaos of wrapping paper, her husband's booming voice leading the birthday song. She let the memories fill her, but she didn't let them drown her. Instead, Doris made a decision. If her family wouldn't mark her birthday, she would find a way to mark it herself, on her own terms. And this year, she resolved, no one would ever forget the day. The morning after her birthday, Doris rose before dawn. The kitchen still smelled faintly of lemon and sugar. The small cake, barely touched, sat covered on the counter, a symbol of celebration and disappointment in equal measure. She made herself coffee, sat at the table, and watched the first pink light slip over the horizon. Instead of sadness, a strange energy filled Doris. She pulled out her address book, flipping past old friends she'd lost touch with, neighbors who'd moved away, relatives scattered across the country. She realized how much her world had shrunk since Ed's passing, and how little she'd done to widen it again. At 9, Doris took a brisk walk through the neighborhood. She waved to the mailman, stopped to chat with Mrs. Lopez about the sudden cold snap, and admired the purple irises blooming near the corner store. Every exchange, however brief, reminded her that there were connections still to be made. Returning home, she tidied the house, played an old jazz record, and dusted her shelves with new purpose. As she polished a silver frame, her phone buzzed, a message from her friend Gloria, whom she hadn't seen in months. "Saw on Facebook it was your birthday, Doris. Hope you celebrated. Miss you." Call me soon. Doris smiled, her spirits lifting. She called Gloria immediately. The conversation was full of laughter, shared memories, and gentle scolding. You should have called me, Doris. I'd have brought a pie and a bottle of wine. Doris promised to make plans for lunch that week, her loneliness softened by the sound of Gloria's voice. As the day went on, Doris made a list of people she hadn't seen in too long: the ladies from her old book club, the retired teachers from the elementary school, the neighbor who always waved from her porch but never stopped in. She wrote notes and slipped them into greeting cards, inviting each to coffee or lunch, hoping to reignite old connections. By noon, Doris felt something shift. She wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to celebrate anymore. She baked a batch of her famous oatmeal cookies and took a plate to the church secretary, who greeted her with a delighted hug and insisted she join the weekly volunteer lunch. At the luncheon, Doris found herself swept up in stories and laughter. She helped set tables, swapped recipes, and promised to return the next week. One of the younger volunteers, Lisa, asked about Doris's birthday plans. Family too busy? Lisa teased gently. Doris shrugged, meeting Lisa's gaze with a knowing smile. Let's just say it's time I learned to celebrate myself a little more. Later, Doris visited the library again, this time volunteering to read to the children's group. The librarian, Mr. Myers, signed her up for the following Thursday. You're always welcome here, Doris. Happy belated birthday. As dusk settled, Doris returned home, arms full of cards and leftover cookies. She put on Ed's favorite record and danced alone in the living room, letting the music wash away what remained of her disappointment. Before bed, she wrote in her journal, her pen moving quickly. She detailed every new connection, every moment of kindness, and ended with a line she underlined twice. Next year, I won't wait for anyone's invitation. I'll create my own celebration. With that promise, Doris turned off the light, heart a little lighter, and drifted into sleep, already imagining the gift she would give herself and the family who'd forgotten her when the next birthday arrived. The week that followed brought a flurry of activity Doris hadn't felt in years. Each morning, she found herself rising earlier, pulled from bed by a quiet excitement rather than duty. She filled her days with plans and small adventures, each one a stitch in a fabric she was weaving for herself. On Monday, Doris hosted Gloria for coffee. They sat on the porch in the late spring sun, sipping strong brews and gossiping about neighbors, recalling old road trips, and even plotting a possible vacation together. Gloria brought flowers and a bright scarf as a belated birthday gift. This is for the woman who needs to get out of the house more, Gloria winked, draping the scarf around Doris's shoulders. Tuesday, Doris dusted off her recipe box and baked a double batch of cinnamon bread. She wrapped loaves in foil and set out on foot, delivering them to Mrs. Lopez, Mr. Myers at the library, and the couple who'd just moved in down the street. Each stop brought a smile, a thank you, a short chat. Doris felt her neighborhood shifting from a place she lived to a place where she belonged. By Wednesday, her invitations began to bear fruit. Mrs. O'Malley from book club called to say she'd love to catch up. Doris arranged a lunch at the corner cafe, and the table soon filled with laughter, a jumble of old stories and new plans. Mrs. O'Malley insisted on picking up the check, for your birthday, and for reminding us all to get out again. Thursday was library day. Doris wore her new scarf, gathered a handful of picture books, and read to a ring of squirming toddlers. Their laughter was infectious. The young librarian snapped a picture for the bulletin board. Doris, surrounded by children, mid-laugh, alive in the moment. Friday's lunch with the church volunteers brought another invitation. Would she consider helping with the community garden? We need someone who actually knows which end of the shovel to use, Lisa joked, nudging Doris. Doris accepted eagerly, imagining fresh vegetables, sunshine, and new friends. The days moved quickly. Each night, Doris returned home with a little less loneliness and a little more purpose. She filled her calendar with dates, lunches, readings, gardening, coffees. She even signed up for a painting class, something she'd always meant to try. But as her world expanded, the absence of her family lingered in the background. Not a single call, not a card, not even a belated apology from Beth or Daniel. Doris felt the sting, but now it was tempered with a growing self-assurance. On Saturday, she visited Ed's grave, leaving a slice of lemon cake and her thanks for the strength she felt blooming inside her. You always said I was tougher than I looked, she whispered. Turns out you were right. That evening, as dusk fell, Doris sat at her dining table, phone and pen in hand. She began to write a list, not of complaints, but of things she wanted to experience, places she wanted to see, kindnesses she wanted to give. It was a birthday list for herself, but with every item, she imagined the look on her family's faces if they ever realized how much she had changed. She smiled to herself, candle flickering beside her, and whispered, "Just wait until next year." The following week, Doris hardly recognized her own routine. Instead of circling her empty living room, she found herself out nearly every day, arms linked with new friends and old acquaintances. She joined the community garden volunteers for an early Saturday planting, her hands deep in the earth alongside Lisa and Mrs. O'Malley, who told stories and shared seeds brought from their own yards. At the cafe on Tuesday, she met two more neighbors, a retired nurse and a widower named Frank, who had a dry wit and an easy laugh. They swapped stories of their children and grandchildren, Doris holding her head high as she explained, "My family's busy these days, but I'm making my own adventures." Frank nodded, a knowing look in his eye. "I always say, sometimes you have to start your own party." The community garden quickly became Doris's second home. She staked out a small patch for herself and planted sunflowers, zinnias, and a row of tomatoes, determined to nurture something new with her own hands. At lunch breaks, the volunteers shared cold lemonade and homemade sandwiches. Lisa admired Doris's scarf, and Mrs. O'Malley taught her a trick for staking tall flowers. The laughter they shared as a group was different from family gatherings, gentler, no expectations, just the pleasure of each other's company. Each evening, Doris returned home with dirt under her fingernails and sun on her cheeks. She found herself humming while preparing supper, her mind replaying stories from the day. She called Gloria to share garden progress and told her about the birthday list she was adding to every night. By midweek, Doris received a letter in the mail, an invitation to join the board of the Friends of the Library. Mr. Myers had recommended her, citing her energy and commitment to the community. Doris was touched, honored that someone outside her family had seen her values so clearly. She called to accept on the spot. Saturday evening brought the church's monthly potluck dinner. Doris carried a pan of her best macaroni and cheese, the table quickly filling with casseroles and pies. She sat with a group of volunteers, laughing and sharing stories, the sting of her birthday fading to a dull ache that was easily drowned out by warmth and belonging. After dinner, she took a slow walk home, admiring the blooming dogwoods and the early stars pricking the sky. She passed Beth's favorite bakery and Daniel's old bus stop, the nostalgia gentle now, no longer sharp. At home, she found a voicemail from Gloria. "You're coming alive again, Doris. I can hear it in your voice. Maybe next year, we'll plan you the birthday party you deserve." Doris sat in her favorite chair, the lemon cake long gone, her list of new adventures growing by the day. The ache for her family was still there, but it was no longer the center of her world. Something else had taken root, resilience, joy, and the knowledge that she was still capable of surprises. Before bed, she penned a thank-you note to Mrs. Bauer at the bakery, tucking in a card for a free gardening session. As she drifted off to sleep, Doris smiled to herself, knowing that even if her family forgot her day, she had found a way to fill her life, and maybe theirs, with something unforgettable. As May gave way to June, Doris's days grew busier than she ever imagined. Her garden plot flourished under her care, the sunflowers stretching tall, the tomatoes already flowering. She joined the library board's first meeting, finding herself welcomed as a peer, her ideas noted and valued. At home, she filled her evenings with notes and calls to friends old and new, invitations circulating for coffee, walks, and community projects. One Wednesday afternoon, Doris found herself helping organize a fundraiser for the local animal shelter. She baked a double batch of cookies and spent hours at the community hall, arranging tables with Gloria, Lisa, and Frank. The event bustled with life. Families, seniors, teenagers, even a few children she'd read to at the library, tugging their parents over to say hello. Frank manned the raffle, cracking jokes with everyone. Gloria persuaded Doris to sign up for the shelter's newsletter and, in the process, Doris agreed to help walk dogs on weekends. She laughed at herself on the way home, amazed at the version of Doris Henderson who now leapt at every opportunity. She no longer felt like a background character in her own life. Each morning brought messages and calls, reminders for meetings, photos of Mrs. O'Malley's prize zinnias, or updates from Lisa about the next garden workday. Doris felt woven into something new, a fabric of community, stitched with every shared meal, every afternoon in the sun, every child smile. Her family remained curiously silent. There were no calls, no cards, not even a stray email from Beth or Daniel. Doris noticed the absence but refused to let it dictate her mood. One afternoon, as she watered the sunflowers, she said aloud, "They'll come around. And if they don't, I'm still here." That weekend, the library hosted a summer reading kickoff. Doris stood with Mr. Myers at the entrance, welcoming families, handing out book lists, and organizing crafts for the children. Her laugh rang out across the room as she led storytime, reading about explorers, new beginnings, and secret treasures. When one little girl hugged her at the end, Doris felt her heart brim with quiet pride. After the event, Lisa and Mrs. O'Malley took her out for coffee. "You're a natural leader," Mrs. O'Malley said, patting Doris's hand. "You make things happen, and people remember it." Doris smiled, sipping her coffee. "I guess I just needed a reminder." On Sunday, she spent the afternoon at Frank's house, joining a small group for a barbecue. The laughter spilled into the street, the kind of easy joy that made her forget about old hurts. Frank showed her his vintage record player, and together they played an old tune Ed used to love, the music floating out into the dusk. That night, Doris looked at her calendar, each day filled with color, with new plans and promises to keep. Her birthday felt far away, almost like another lifetime. Still, as she wrote her nightly journal entry, she paused, thinking about her family. She wondered if they'd noticed the change in her, if word had gotten back about her new circles, her leadership, her laughter. The thought made her smile. And then she wrote another line in her list, underlined it twice. Next year, they won't know what hit them. June's warmth brought even more opportunities. Doris threw herself into community life, helping Lisa organize a garden tour, reading at the summer story hour, and sharing tomatoes from her plot with neighbors. Her phone buzzed daily with messages and invitations. Each "thank you" she received was another stitch in her tapestry of belonging. One Tuesday, Mr. Myers approached her after library board meeting, beaming. "We'd like you to lead the committee for our autumn gala. You have a way of bringing people together, Doris." Surprised but delighted, she agreed, already dreaming up themes and making a mental list of people she'd invite to help. Back at home, Doris tackled long-overlooked projects with newfound purpose. She rearranged her living room, sorted through Ed's old records, and set aside favorite books and trinkets to share at the next library fundraiser. She baked a new cake for every gathering, lemon, cinnamon, chocolate, finding joy in the simple act of giving. Meanwhile, Gloria visited often, sometimes with flowers, sometimes with stories from her own lively brood of grandchildren. They planned a small trip to the coast for late summer, a promise of sand, sunsets, and fresh adventure. "Ed would be proud of you," Gloria said one evening, hugging Doris tight. Doris squeezed her friend's hand. "I think I'm finally proud of myself." Frank remained a steadfast presence, joining her for walks and helping fix the squeaky garden gate. Their friendship blossomed quietly. No pressure, just the steady comfort of someone who listened and understood. But as Doris's world grew brighter, her family's silence became starker by contrast. She learned through Mrs. Lopez that Beth's son had graduated from high school, and through Frank that Daniel's company had won an award. No one called. No invitation arrived. Not a word of apology or regret. The ache returned in flashes, sharp but fleeting. Instead of shrinking, Doris used it as fuel. She threw herself into her plans for the autumn gala, determined to make it the biggest, warmest event of the year. She started keeping a notebook of ideas, musicians, decorations, speeches, and quietly began saving for something special she had in mind for the next birthday. As summer deepened, Doris's days became a patchwork of community, laughter, and self-made meaning. The garden overflowed. The library flourished. Her friendships grew into an unexpected, glorious family of their own. Each evening, as she looked at her full calendar, Doris added to her secret list names of people she wanted to thank, dreams she wanted to chase, and, at the very end, a simple phrase. "Next year, I'll show them what it means to be remembered." By late summer, Doris's reputation in the community had blossomed. She was the woman to call for advice, a hand, or a listening ear. The library's autumn gala committee met weekly in her living room, the walls echoing with laughter and spirited debate. Doris's cakes were now legendary, her stories requested at every gathering, and her sunflowers stood taller than the garden fence. The local paper ran a story about the library's outreach program, quoting Doris as a cornerstone of our neighborhood. Lisa clipped the article and brought it to the cafe, raising a toast with cold lemonade and grins all around. "We're lucky to have you," Frank said, and the others agreed. Yet, as summer slipped toward fall, a ripple of her new life finally reached her family. One evening, Beth called, her voice hesitant, almost guilty. "Mom, I heard from Mrs. Lopez you've been busy. Are you all right? I feel like we haven't talked in ages." Doris felt a pang, pride, sadness, a touch of amusement, but answered with warmth. "I'm well, Beth. I've been volunteering, gardening, seeing friends. There's a lot happening here." Beth hesitated, then offered, "Maybe we could come by next weekend. Daniel might be able to join, too." Doris paused, considering. "That would be nice. Let me know your plans." She hung up, heart thrumming, not with hope, but with certainty. She had something to share with them this time, a full life, a home filled with stories and people who valued her. Preparations for the gala intensified. Doris worked side by side with Gloria and Lisa, transforming the library into a patchwork of lights, handmade banners, and fresh flowers from the garden. On the day of the event, the hall filled with neighbors, volunteers, and even the mayor, who called Doris up for a bouquet and a round of applause. She spoke briefly, thanking everyone for the welcome, the kindness, and the chance to start anew. That night, as the last guest left and Doris tidied the empty hall, she felt a strange peace settle over her. She knew what she would do for her next birthday, how she would gather the threads of her new world and offer them as a gift no one would forget. The week rolled on. Her family's visit was confirmed. Beth called twice more, a little more warmth in her voice each time. Doris smiled to herself, thinking how much could change in a single season, how sometimes, by building something for yourself, you end up teaching others how to cherish you. That night, she journaled one last line. "This year, my celebration will be for everyone who showed up, myself included." Doris woke before dawn on her 73rd birthday, the sky just beginning to blush with light. She moved quietly through the house, setting out fresh flowers and trays of her best lemon cake, oatmeal cookies, and sandwiches. There were no wrapped presents, but she laid out thank-you cards, each inscribed with a memory or gratitude for the person it was meant for. At 10, friends began to arrive. Gloria first, arms full of daisies, followed by Lisa and Mrs. O'Malley, Frank with his famous potato salad, and a parade of neighbors and library volunteers. They filled the house with laughter and music, stories flowing from the kitchen to the garden. The community garden group arrived with fresh vegetables and bouquets. The children from Story Hour drew pictures for her, and the mayor sent a card with a note of appreciation. Midday brought the surprise. Beth and Daniel arrived, their faces uncertain but hopeful. They stepped inside to find not the quiet home of last year, but a space alive with celebration and warmth. Beth hugged her mother, Daniel shook her hand, both overwhelmed by the crowd that greeted them. Doris smiled, graceful and calm. "You're just in time for lunch," she said, ushering them to the table. When the meal ended, Doris stood to address her guests. "Last year, I celebrated alone. This year, I decided to share my birthday with everyone who showed up for me, in ways big and small. You all gave me the best gift, your time, your kindness, and your friendship. Thank you." She turned to her children, her voice gentle but strong. "We don't always get to choose who remembers us, but we do get to choose how we remember ourselves. Today, I want you to see what I've built, and know you are welcome in it." Beth and Daniel sat in stunned silence for a moment, then both hugged her tightly. "We're sorry, Mom," Beth whispered. "We should have been here sooner." Doris held them both, her heart steady and at peace. As the sun dipped low, Doris's house hummed with the contentment of a day well spent. There were new plans for next year, invitations for more gatherings, and promises that this celebration would be the first of many. That night, after the last guest had gone, Doris sat at her table, hands folded around a cup of tea. She felt no regret, no longing, only gratitude for the community she'd made and the family who had found their way home. She wrote one final line in her journal. "I gave them a gift they'll never forget, the gift of seeing me, fully, at the center of my own story."